Some smiles don't comfort you. They hunt you. Evan Harper's smile that night wasn't meant to reassure. It was the kind of smile you only see right before the wrecking ball swings. The ballroom shimmered beneath crystal chandeliers at the HarperCare 12th anniversary gala. Over 300 guests in gowns and tailored suits toasted to a legacy of healthcare innovation. Cameras flashed. Waiters floated between tables with champagne flutes. And on stage, under the spotlight, stood Evan, the face of HarperCare's public image, the charming husband of the CEO, and the man with a voice made for press conferences and political campaigns. He held the mic with ease. Smiled like he always did, warm, rehearsed, believable. Everyone assumed he was about to praise Natalie Harper. The woman who built the HarperCare empire from a small Texas clinic into a nationwide powerhouse. His wife. The queen of the evening. But instead, he said this. Natalie, I've tolerated your control, your coldness, your rules. But I'm not your pet anymore. The room froze. You could hear a fork drop. A champagne glass paused midair. A donor's mouth still open in anticipation of applause. And Natalie? She didn't flinch. No gasp. No anger. No visible emotion. She simply turned her eyes toward Evan, slowly, deliberately, and gave him a half-smile. One that didn't reach her eyes. One that said, I was hoping you'd say that. In that moment, the air shifted. The walls seemed to listen. And while most in the room sat stunned, Natalie Harper knew exactly what was coming. Because 3 months earlier, on an ordinary Thursday, in her sleek corner office overlooking downtown Austin, she had bent down to pick up a USB drive that had slipped from Evan's blazer pocket. That moment, small, silent, easily overlooked, cracked everything. Inside the drive? A folder. A name, Jenna. Photos. Hotel receipts. A voice recording. Let her keep the hospitals. I want the board. Outside, they were the couple everyone admired. America's healthcare power duo. Hashtag couple goals in every campaign video. But beneath the glossy surface, their home was hollow. Built on secrets. Ego. Control. And betrayal. Natalie hadn't said a word. Not at first. Not yet. She waited. She watched. She planned. And now, under the soft light of a $2,000 chandelier and the eyes of every major investor, Evan Harper had just delivered the opening line of a speech that wasn't his. It was hers. He just didn't know it yet. To the outside world, they were a dream team. Natalie Harper, sharp, decisive, the youngest CEO of a multi-state healthcare system in U.S. history. The woman who could walk into a room full of politicians, insurers, and hedge fund executives and silence it with one look. And then there was Evan. The golden boy with perfect posture, perfect hair, and the kind of charisma that could disarm you in 3 sentences. He wasn't just her husband, he was the public face of HarperCare's charity wing. He kissed babies on camera, hosted webinars on mental health, and had a smile that looked like it had never known cruelty. They had a daughter, Emma. 8 years old. Brilliant. Sensitive. She loved horses and hated loud parties. Natalie adored her with the kind of fierce, structured love only someone who'd built an empire from scratch could give. Every morning, the nanny brought Emma to Natalie's office just so she could have lunch with her between board meetings. And every evening, Natalie returned to a glass house perched on the outskirts of Austin. Minimalist. Immaculate. Designed by an award-winning architect who once said he modeled the angles after emotional precision. From the outside, it was all so flawless. So how did it rot? Inside those clean white walls, Natalie and Evan hadn't touched each other in months. Conversations turned into logistics. Did you sign the contract with Blue Cross? Emma has a parent-teacher meeting Thursday. The board needs your signature before noon. There were no fights. No slamming doors. Just silence, sterile and polite, like a high-end hotel lobby. Evan stopped sleeping in their bed around the same time Natalie stopped asking why. He traveled more. Lingered longer at charity events. Started his own podcast about emotional resilience and leadership, where he quoted Stoic philosophers and gave advice about mutual respect in marriage. The irony was almost impressive. Natalie, for her part, kept everything running. That's what she did. Control wasn't a flaw, it was her lifeline. She couldn't afford to unravel, not with thousands of employees, patients, and investors depending on her. So she swallowed it all. The loneliness. The suspicion. The growing emptiness inside her daughter's eyes every time Evan missed another piano recital. Then came the USB. It wasn't labeled. Just tucked into the lining of Evan's briefcase. If it hadn't fallen out while she was cleaning the office, something she hadn't done in years, she might have never found it. Inside were images. Jenna, a younger woman. Pretty, confident. His communications advisor. There were texts. Hotel bills. One folder labeled Phase 2, Messaging Strategy. Another labeled Board Dynamics, Weak Links. And one audio clip. His voice. Let her keep the hospitals. I want the board. In that moment, something cold and ancient woke up inside Natalie. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She backed up the drive. Sent the original to a burner cloud. And picked up the phone. Caleb Voss, she asked. The voice on the other end didn't hesitate. Yes. I need you to find out who my husband really is. Natalie didn't waste time. Within an hour of finding the USB, she was sitting alone in her study, the lights dimmed, her laptop humming softly beside her. The house was quiet, too quiet. Emma had already gone to bed, and Evan was in New York on a leadership retreat he'd conveniently forgotten to mention until the night before. She hit play on the recording again. Let her keep the hospitals. I want the board. His voice was calm. Calculated. As if he were discussing a quarterly earnings report, not betraying the woman who had given him her name, her daughter, her empire. The file was dated 6 weeks earlier. The metadata traced it to a hotel suite in Palm Springs. Natalie stared at the waveform on her screen, unmoving. She'd built hospitals from concrete and sweat. Funded research that saved lives. Mentored women who'd survived everything from sexism to cancer. And now, the man who posed with her in glossy brochures was plotting to gut her from the inside. Her fingers trembled, but only once. Then she reached for her phone and dialed a number she hadn't used in 6 years. Boss, the voice answered. Caleb, she said quietly. It's Natalie Harper. I need a favor. A pause. Then, in that same gravelly tone. What kind of favor? I need you to trace someone. And I need complete discretion. Who? My husband. Silence. Then a short, knowing breath. I'm on my way. Underscore 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 underscore. Caleb Voss wasn't a man you found on LinkedIn. He used to work in Homeland Security, cybercrime, corporate espionage, digital forensics. Now, he operated in the gray zones between data privacy and silent war. His office was a windowless bunker beneath an old bookstore in East Austin. No signage. No front desk. Just a biometric scanner and a locked door that only opened for people who already knew what they were asking for. When Natalie walked in the next morning, she didn't say hello. She dropped a flash drive on his desk. This is everything I found, she said. Photos, audio, documents. I need to know where it leads. Caleb plugged it in, scanned the files without blinking. Who's Jenna? His media strategist. Caleb tapped a few keys. Facial recognition software lit up. Social media history. IP logins. A matching geotagged selfie from Palm Springs, Jenna in a swimsuit by the infinity pool of the same resort where Evan had claimed to be meeting hospital donors. Caleb leaned back. Want the short version or the ugly one? Give me the worst. Your husband is laying the groundwork for a takeover. He's been hosting off-the-record meetings with 2 Harper Care board members. All the while, he's launching a reputation-first media campaign that positions you as, how do I put this politely? A control freak. Natalie didn't flinch. He wants the board, she said quietly. He's halfway there. She nodded once. Slowly. I want to burn the bridge before he crosses it. Caleb smiled for the first time. Then we start watching. For 3 weeks, Natalie said nothing. She smiled at board meetings. Signed off on hospital renovations. Sat beside Evan during a press shoot for HarperCare's new mental health initiative and even let him kiss her temple on camera. The photo went viral, again. Power couple of healthcare. Still going strong after a decade. And while the internet swooned, Natalie was building a war room. Caleb Voss moved like a ghost. He used prepaid phones, encrypted servers, and never communicated the same way twice. Natalie didn't ask how he got his information. She only asked for facts, and he delivered. The first thing Caleb confirmed, Evan wasn't just having an affair. He was running a campaign. Behind the scenes, Evan had built an entire communications infrastructure, podcasts, anonymous op-eds, a slowly growing movement around redefining leadership in healthcare. His platform? Empathy over hierarchy. His target? The exact kind of leadership Natalie embodied, structured, firm, unapologetically female. It was genius, in its way. Poison sugar-coated in progress. Evan had also been courting Harper Care board members under the guise of engagement strategy. 2 of them, former allies of Natalie's father, had started echoing Evan's talking points in meetings. Soft at first. Maybe we need more warmth in the brand. Natalie's tone can come across distant. Then firmer. Should the CEO also be the face of the company? Maybe it's time for fresh energy. And there it was. The slow rot. Caleb pulled phone records. Evan and Jenna had spoken daily, not just during work hours, but late into the night. Their messages were encrypted, routed through a private app registered under a shell company in Delaware. But Caleb cracked the metadata. You want to see the receipts? He asked one night, dropping a stack of printed invoices on Natalie's desk. Palm Springs. 2 flights. 1 suite. Paid through Harper Foundation's discretionary budget. Natalie didn't pick up the papers. She stared straight ahead. Then finally said, he's using hospital money to finance an affair. And his coup, Caleb added. They're building a content library. Interviews. Testimonials. Videos that frame you as the problem. Natalie inhaled, long and controlled. So we build one of our own. Caleb raised an eyebrow. She continued, I'll invite Evan to join a new PR initiative. The Harper Legacy Project. A documentary celebrating 12 years of service, family, and vision. We'll film it all, with our team. You want to bait him, Caleb said. I want him to reveal who he is, Natalie replied. Her voice was steady. Her eyes cold. Let him lie. On camera. Let him shape his perfect image. Because when the truth drops, I want everyone to see exactly what he tried to sell them. Caleb gave a slow, impressed nod. Careful, he said. You're starting to sound like me. She almost smiled. No. I'm starting to sound like the woman I used to be, before I married a mask. It didn't take long. By the following Monday, Caleb had what Natalie needed, photos, invoices, and the kind of damning footage that didn't need subtitles. Palm Springs. A luxury resort tucked into the desert, where rooms cost more per night than a nurse's monthly paycheck. It was supposed to be a leadership retreat, that's what Evan had told his assistant, and that's what she'd dutifully logged in the calendar. But Caleb found the real itinerary. 2 round-trip tickets. First class. Austin to Palm Springs. 1 suite with a private plunge pool. Paid for, not by Evan's credit card, but by a Harper Foundation discretionary account reserved for community outreach. Natalie sat in silence as Caleb played the footage. Grainy at first, from a distance. Jenna in sunglasses and a silk cover-up, sipping from a cocktail glass by the pool. Evan beside her, laughing, touching her thigh like he'd done it 100 times before. The camera angle changed. Closer now. Audio clearer. Jenna's voice. Once she's out, we go public. Evan. They'll eat it up. Power couple 2.0. You're everything she's not. Natalie didn't flinch. She just whispered, pause it. Caleb hit the spacebar. On screen, Evan had turned toward Jenna, eyes soft, smile effortless, the exact same expression he wore in HarperCare's Mother's Day commercial, right before pulling Natalie into a hug for the camera. I want it all documented, Natalie said. Every dollar, every message, every step. You'll have it, Caleb assured her. But that's not all. He handed her a manila envelope. Inside, screenshots of text threads, archived emails, and one particularly interesting file. A message sent from Evan's encrypted server, not to Jenna, but to a name Natalie hadn't heard in years. Roger Hale. Her father's former mentor. The man who taught her how to navigate politics, who once called her too calculated to be trusted. He'd disappeared years ago after a scandal involving a startup accelerator and missing investor funds. Natalie narrowed her eyes. What's he doing talking to Evan? Caleb looked grim. Turns out Evan and Roger go way back. Before HarperCare. They were part of a business incubator that got shut down for being a glorified pyramid scheme. Roger was the architect. Evan? The golden recruit. Natalie's hands tightened into fists. He didn't marry into the Harper legacy, she muttered. He infiltrated it. Caleb nodded. This was never about the marriage. Or even the affair. This was about power. About planting himself deep enough that when he made his move, no one would question it. Well, Natalie said, voice low but unshakable, they're going to question it now. She stood up, crossed to the window overlooking downtown Austin, the skyline she helped build, the empire he tried to hijack. And with her back to Caleb, she said, let's make sure the cameras are rolling when he thinks he's won. The plan had to be perfect. Not loud. Not dramatic. But surgical. Natalie knew Evan. Knew how much he loved to be seen, the lights, the cameras, the applause. He didn't want a victory. He wanted an audience for it. So she gave him one. 2 days after the Palm Springs discovery, Natalie called a family meeting, just her, Evan, and Emma, sitting at their oversized marble kitchen island like a portrait from an aspirational magazine. She poured Evan coffee, smiled warmly, and said, I've been thinking. It's time we tell our story. Evan blinked. Our story? She nodded. 12 years of HarperCare. A decade of marriage. Building something from the ground up. People admire us. Why not share the journey? He hesitated. Then, as expected, his ego lit up like a flare. That's a really good idea. Natalie smiled. She told him she'd already reached out to a documentary team. Said they had political filmmaking experience, the kind of crew that knew how to frame a legacy. What she didn't say was that the director, a quiet woman named Elise Tran, had worked on exposés that made senators resign. By the end of the week, filming began. Cameras were set up in their home, their offices, their childhood neighborhoods. Natalie played the doting wife, the thoughtful executive. Evan, as expected, played himself. Charming. Generous. Relatable. Too relatable. Every time they rolled, Elise would slide in small, precise questions. How do you and Natalie resolve conflict? Do you ever feel overshadowed by her accomplishments? What's the one thing you wish people knew about your leadership style? And Evan? He answered like a man being interviewed for the crown. No script. Just polished resentment wrapped in charisma. One afternoon, while filming at HarperCare HQ, Evan sat on the executive couch, legs crossed, answering a prompt about building trust. He smiled wide. Natalie's strength is impressive. But sometimes strength can become rigidity. I think people need warmth too. Leadership has to evolve. Natalie sat off camera, arms crossed, silent. Elise caught her eye. Perfect. They filmed Evan interacting with patients, nurses, interns. He shook hands, gave pep talks, quoted books he never finished. Natalie made sure the footage was high quality, crisp, sincere-looking, dangerous. Meanwhile, Caleb worked in the background, pulling financials, tracing digital trails, tracking Jenna's movements and Roger Hale's encrypted calls. He even uncovered a hidden shared account between Evan and Jenna, used to fund branded content for their upcoming new venture. A new venture. With a launch date 3 weeks after the gala. Natalie let it all unfold. She didn't flinch when Evan called her intimidating but brilliant on camera. She didn't react when he referred to their marriage as a partnership of vision, not affection. She just listened. Watched. Waited. Because sometimes, the best way to bury a traitor is to let him build his own podium. The name Roger Hale haunted Natalie like a ghost she never buried. When Caleb first showed her the email, a short encrypted message from Evan to Roger's private server, she had to read it twice to believe it. Roger Hale. Her father's old advisor. The man who once sat at their dinner table talking about long-term vision and dynastic growth. The same man who whispered to Natalie, when she was 23 and preparing to take her first executive role. You're smart. But you're cold. People don't follow cold. He vanished 5 years later, in the aftermath of an SEC probe into a startup incubator that collapsed overnight. Investors lost millions. Roger was never charged, but he also never showed his face again. Until now. What's the connection? Natalie asked. Caleb leaned over the tablet, pulling up a side-by-side. 15 years ago, he said, tapping the screen. Roger Hale starts a leadership development firm. No brick and mortar, no financial audits. Just online seminars and vague promises of mentorship. He flipped to a new file. Guess who's listed as a featured success story? A photo of Evan. Younger, leaner, with a cheap suit and a desperate smile. Back then, he wasn't a media darling. He was Evan S., a motivational speaker trying to sell self-help ebooks and gain enough YouTube followers to pay rent. Roger found him, Caleb said. Groomed him. Taught him how to weaponize charm. Taught him how to sell aspiration. Natalie stared at the image. It wasn't just betrayal. It was strategy. Roger brought Evan to the gala, she murmured. The first one. 15 years ago. I thought he was just someone's plus one. He was a plant, Caleb confirmed. Roger embedded him in your world. The speeches, the charity events, the social impact panels, it was all about exposure. Not for the cause. For Evan. Natalie exhaled, long and slow. He infiltrated us. Worse than that. He studied her. Mirrored her. Became the kind of man her family would trust. Do you think Roger is backing the takeover? She asked. He's not backing it, Caleb said. He's architecting it. Evan's just the frontman. Roger's the strategist. Jenna's the amplifier. The whole thing is a reverse acquisition, but of your name. Natalie leaned back in her chair. The realization was surgical. They weren't just trying to take HarperCare. They were trying to take her identity. Her story. Her legacy. She turned to Caleb, eyes colder than they'd been in years. Can you get Roger on camera? Caleb raised an eyebrow. You want him exposed? She nodded. More than that. I want him to admit it. I want the world to see the man behind the mask, and the puppet he built. Caleb cracked a rare smile. Then it's time we give Roger his close-up. The gala was held at the Rosemont Pavilion in Manhattan, vaulted ceilings, a wall of glass overlooking the skyline, and enough gold leaf on the floral centerpieces to pay a nurse's salary twice over. Harper Care's annual gala wasn't just a party. It was a statement. A show of legacy, power, and polish. Politicians, billionaires, hospital executives, all gathered in tailored suits and designer gowns, to sip on vintage wine and applaud themselves for changing the world. Natalie let it happen. Let the illusion shimmer one last time. Cameras flashed as she arrived in a black silk gown, minimalist, severe, elegant. Evan stood at her side in a navy tuxedo, hand placed delicately on her back like a man in love. The photographers ate it up. Still Harper Care's golden couple, one reporter whispered. Natalie didn't correct her. Not yet. The room buzzed with anticipation. Everyone knew Evan would be speaking tonight, a surprise segment, billed as an inside look at the future of compassionate leadership. His idea, of course. He'd even written the title himself, Reconstruction, Building Empathy into Power. Natalie let him take the stage first. He walked up like a man made for the spotlight, mic in hand, smile slow and deliberate. We often confuse strength with silence, Evan began, voice buttery. But tonight, I want to talk about the courage to change, to evolve leadership from control, into connection. The audience nodded. They clapped. A few even stood. He was hitting all the right notes. And that's when Natalie gave the signal. From the control booth, Elise tapped a button. The stage screen, previously looping muted footage of HarperCare patients and staff, went black. Then lit up again. Only this time, it wasn't a highlight reel. It was Jenna. Sitting on the edge of the Palm Springs pool, cocktail in hand, looking directly into a hidden camera. Once she's out, Jenna said, voice clear and undeniable, we go public. Power Couple 2.0. Gasps rippled through the room. The screen cut to another clip. Roger Hale, recorded on a secure call. HarperCare has brand value. Legacy. What it lacks is emotional accessibility. Evan gives us the face. We'll rewrite the narrative by Q4. Then a final video. Evan, in a private strategy meeting. Leaning forward, smiling that same too smooth smile. She built the hospitals. I'll take the board. It's not personal, it's positioning. The room fell dead silent. Evan stood frozen on stage, mic still in his hand. Natalie stepped forward, slowly, heels clicking like a metronome of judgment. She didn't take the mic. She didn't need it. The screen behind Evan now showed a still photo, Emma, their daughter, holding a drawing. Below it, in crayon, were the words. Dad said you'd disappear. Are you disappearing? No one applauded. No one moved. The illusion shattered. Evan looked around, first for Jenna, then for someone to save him. But there was no one left on his side. Natalie turned, walked off stage, and never looked back. Evan Harper didn't leave the stage. He stumbled off it. Security didn't escort him, they didn't have to. The crowd parted like he was contagious. Murmurs followed him down the aisle, but no one reached out. No one offered a word of comfort. Not even the junior staffers who used to hang on his every TED Talk quote. In the hours that followed, the HarperCare Gala unraveled across the internet. Clips of the leaked footage hit social media within 30 minutes. Hashtags exploded. Hashtag Harper Fallout. Hashtag Empathy Empire exposed. Hashtag the other power couple. Natalie said nothing publicly. She didn't need to. By the next morning, HarperCare stock, which analysts expected to plummet in scandal, surged instead. Investors praised Natalie's transparency. Board members who'd once whispered behind her back now scrambled to distance themselves from Evan. Crisis handled with surgical grace. Jenna deleted all her profiles within 48 hours. No LinkedIn, no Instagram, no trace. Her personal website went dark. Caleb traced her last IP ping to an airport lounge in Lisbon. Then nothing. Roger Hale's name hit federal databases again. Not for motivational speaking this time, for fraud, money laundering, and misuse of charitable funds. Turns out, he'd been shifting donor money through shell accounts for over a decade. The exposé footage Natalie released prompted an SEC investigation. They reopened his case within the week. And Evan? He tried to salvage his story. Hosted a livestream from what looked like a rental condo, cream walls, plants that still had price tags on them. He wore a hoodie, went full raw and real, claimed to be the victim of manipulation, a man under pressure, just trying to be seen. Caleb had already predicted it. Phase 4, perform vulnerability, he'd said dryly. But Natalie had more. As Evan spoke into the camera, viewers flooded the comments with screenshots. Anonymous emails. Staff testimonials. Even a leaked memo where Evan pitched Jenna a podcast series about rebranding Betrayal as growth. His voice cracked on screen. The viewer count dropped in real time. No one was buying it. Natalie watched the whole thing once. Silently. Then closed the laptop and slid it across the desk. Done. What had once been glass, a marriage, a reputation, a picture-perfect brand, was now ash. Scattered by the wind of truth she'd let loose herself. That evening, she and Emma sat on the back patio, overlooking the Texas hills. The air was quiet. Real. Natalie held a cup of tea. Emma, barefoot, braided grass into little loops and didn't ask where her father was. Natalie didn't explain. She didn't have to. Some endings didn't need punctuation. Just space to breathe. The boardroom was full. 12 people. 12 seats. One empty. Evans. Natalie sat at the head of the polished oak table, her posture flawless, her hands calm over a leather binder marked simply, Evidence. Behind her, the city skyline burned gold in the morning sun. Below her, HarperCare's entire executive floor waited for what everyone now called the reckoning. Caleb stood in the corner, silent, no badge, no title, just the man who knew where every body was buried. Natalie began with no theatrics. No emotion. Just facts. I've called this emergency board meeting to address misuse of corporate funds, breach of fiduciary duty, and deliberate internal sabotage by Evan Harper. She passed the first document down the line. A full accounting of foundation funds redirected to private travel. Proof of a content production company co-owned by Evan and Jenna, funded through Harper grants. Timeline of meetings with Roger Hale, complete with call logs, bank transfers, and internal communications designed to erode confidence in her leadership. She spoke plainly. Cleanly. As if reading a medical diagnosis. No anger. No need. Truth didn't need volume to hit like thunder. One board member cleared his throat. This is damning. Another, why didn't you come to us earlier? Natalie looked him in the eye. Because trust doesn't grow back after fire. It either survives, or it doesn't. She handed them a final envelope, legal action. Evan was to be removed from every official position, from all Harper-affiliated ventures, and barred from future consulting engagements. The board would vote today. Unanimous. 12-0. Done. But Natalie wasn't finished. She stood. Walked to the empty chair that once belonged to Evan. And gently placed something there. A handwritten letter. Folded. Neat. Written in purple marker. From Emma. You lied to Mom. You lied to me too. That was all it said. The room fell silent. There was no applause. No cheering. Just the weight of consequences hanging in the air, earned, sharpened, final. Natalie turned back toward the board. I'm not asking for your respect, she said. I'm reminding you what happens when someone mistakes legacy for leverage. She gathered her binder. Nodded once to Caleb. And walked out. She didn't look back. Didn't need to. Let them sit in the silence her husband once thought he could fill with charm. Let them remember that behind every empire, there's a woman who built it brick by brick, and who knows exactly how to protect it when the termites come from inside. Natalie didn't throw a party. There was no champagne. No celebratory press release. No, I told you so. Just a quiet Thursday morning, 6 weeks after the boardroom vote, when she stepped down as CEO of Harper Care. The official reason? To focus on legacy initiatives and personal wellness. The real reason? Because the battle had been won, but the war had changed her. She didn't want to spend the rest of her life fighting shadows in corner offices. She wanted something real. Something earned. Something honest. So she shifted roles. Took on a mentorship program she'd once helped fund but never had time to touch. Women in healthcare, mid-career, overworked, often overlooked, now had someone to fight beside them. Natalie taught them more than leadership. She taught them how to survive being underestimated. She taught them how to reclaim narratives written by others. How to navigate boardrooms where every smile might be a loaded weapon. And how to leave, without losing themselves. Caleb left too. One morning, she walked into her office and found a small, square envelope on her desk. No note inside. Just a black USB drive and a slip of paper. You didn't survive, Natalie. You rewrote survival. CV. No forwarding address. No return calls. Ghosts don't linger where the work is done. Natalie never tried to find him. Some people weren't meant to stay. Just to pass through when the storm required them. And Emma? She healed the way children do, slowly, in uneven pieces, with unexpected questions and long silences. One evening, Natalie found her daughter in the backyard, tying sticks into the shape of stars. What are you making? Natalie asked softly. Emma didn't look up. Something strong that can still fall apart if it needs to. Natalie knelt beside her. Smiled. I think you just described people. They didn't talk about Evan much. He was living on the East Coast now. Trying to rebuild whatever fragments he hadn't already burned. He called twice a month. Sometimes Emma answered. Sometimes she didn't. Natalie never picked up. Forgiveness wasn't mandatory. Closure wasn't required. Peace didn't have to be symmetrical. One Sunday afternoon, she sat on the porch, coffee in hand, barefoot, the Texas sun warming her skin. No phone. No meetings. No cameras. Just wind. And Emma's laughter drifting in from the yard. And for the first time in years, she felt it. Not victory. Not vindication. But quiet. And maybe, that was enough. Sometimes betrayal doesn't feel like a knife. It feels like paper. The script they hand you at the beginning of your life. The one you're expected to follow, page by page, smile by smile. Be the good wife. The polished executive. The steady hand behind someone else's spotlight. I followed that script. For years. Until I realized, it wasn't mine. They stole the story. Rewrote the scenes. Gave my name a costume, my face a brand, and my legacy a leash. But here's the thing about being underestimated. You learn how to build in silence. How to observe. How to wait. And when the time comes, you don't scream. You write. You edit. You cut out the liars, the architects of manipulation, the mentors who never deserved the title. And then? You own the ending. This wasn't a story about heartbreak. This was about blueprint theft. And reclamation. I didn't survive what they did to me. I rewrote survival itself. Now, when I walk into a room, I don't carry proof. I carry presence. I don't owe anyone a happy ending. Because the ending isn't for them. It's for me. And to every woman listening, every mother, every leader, every survivor who's been told to smile and sit still while someone else rearranged your life. Legacy isn't what you're given. It's what you fight to define. They stole the script. I wrote the story. And this time, I own the final word.